If you know my friend Dean Hall, then you know he swam the entire length of the Willamette River. It took him 3 weeks in the cold water, going in and out of hypothermia, and it cured him of leukemia. And that is only half of Dean Hall's story. When he went back to the oncologist who diagnosed him in the first place, and they drew his blood, and the oncologist informed him there is no trace of chronic leukemia anywhere in your body, there still was lymphoma. Dean Hall had cured himself of leukemia with 3 straight weeks of cold water swimming, but his oncologist warned him that his lymphoma was still going to kill him. And he wanted Dean to undergo the traditional allopathic cancer therapies that Dean was trying to avoid. Dean said he didn't want to do chemo, and he pleaded with his oncologist to give him some time to see what he could do about the lymphoma. And the oncologist said, I can't keep you as a patient if you refuse treatment, at least the way I remember it. You can check the podcast with Dean in his own words and hear him tell that's part of his story. Dean resolved to treat himself with forest bathing. If you don't know about forest bathing, there's a long list of literature in Japan. It's called shinrin-yoku. And it's pretty much how it translates. You go out into the forest. It doesn't take more than several hours a week. So this could be 4 hours a week, 2 different days. Dean picked one day, and he spent overnight, and he would walk in the Oregon woods in the afternoon. And the idea here is to immerse yourself in the natural environment of the forest. Now, there are a lot of documented benefits to forest bathing. Here's a review. This is Wen et al. In the Environmental Health and Preventative Medicine Journal. And they're telling us that forest bathing includes improved cardiovascular function, improved circulation, improved neuroendocrine indices, metabolic indices, immunity, improved inflammation, improved markers of antioxidation, and electrophysiological indices. Well, who wouldn't want all that from just taking a walk in the woods for a few hours a week? But there's also a study, this one also coming out of Japan. A forest bathing trip increases human natural killer activity and expression of anti-cancer proteins in female subjects. The immune system boost that you get from walking in the forest can help heal cancer. And this is what Dean was going for. Now, most people still believe that it's a chemical that is released by certain coniferous trees. It's called phytoncides, if I'm saying this correctly. It's phyto N sides. And these phytoncides, they're in the air, you breathe them in, you absorb them into your body through your lungs, and they have this immune system boosting effect, according to papers like this one on the female subjects and their anti-cancer markers. The concentrations of phytoncides were measured in the forest, and they found that the phytoncides were in the air, and they were associated with increased natural killer cell activity. So the idea here is that these particular species of trees that release the phytoncides will benefit the subjects when they breathe in the smell of the pine trees. But forest bathing and its benefits doesn't depend upon pine trees. The benefits of forest bathing are more general, more universal. When you take a walk into the green, shady forest, mood improves, wounds heal faster. And so if it's not the phytoncides, or just not just the phytoncides, what else might it be? I submit to you that it is the light environment. It is green light. And that's what this podcast is about. I went on the Danny Jones podcast and we talked a lot about ice baths. But somewhere in the middle, I got my green light out. This is the green lamp called MyGreen Lamp. And it's produced in China by a red light company from whom I requested green LED lights. There are two wavelengths in this one, 530 nanometers and 545 nanometers. So there's a lot of portable red lights, battery operated. They're out on the market. They're all made in Shenzhen, China, just like this one is, which is sort of an electronics manufacturing capital in China. But I called one of these manufacturers, or emailed one of these manufacturers, and asked it for these LED lights to be in the green wavelengths. And I demonstrated the green lamp for Danny, and I said, look, it relieves migraine headaches. There's some good studies on this. Nobody really believes how it works. And that's because migraineurs have been through so many fraudulent or even FDA-approved treatments that never seem to work, that most migraineurs, people who suffer from chronic migraines, are quite jaded and cynical about any treatment that says, oh, here's the miraculous cure for migraine. There are a lot of things that you can do that will sort of nibble around the edges, improve your metabolism, ensure you're getting enough electrolytes, improve your light environment. All of these things are going to be helpful. But when they get the green light, whether it's a migraine or a post-concussion headache or a sinus headache, when they get the green light, they turn it on. Most people just use it full power. They allow the green to come in through their closed eyelids from about 6 inches away from their face. The green acts on the back of their eye, of course, on their retina, and sends a signal through the optic nerve to the brain. Now, with your eyes closed and the MyGreen lamp close to your face like this, is the only wavelength that is penetrating, and that's important. When you have a migraine, most migraineurs will experience something called photophobia. Any light increases their pain and discomfort. And so many of them will lock themselves in a closet or a dark bedroom until the migraine passes. Just eliminate all wavelengths of light. But a study by Rami Bernstein's group at Harvard University wanted to look into photophobia closer. They tested individual wavelengths of light. And people who suffer from chronic migraines confirmed that every single wavelength made their pain worse, except one. Green made their pain better. And so this Harvard University clinical trial noticed that green light offers pain relief to migraineurs. Well, that was followed up at the University of Arizona that did several green light studies for chronic pain. This is migraine, for fibromyalgia, and they confirmed the Harvard University studies. The protocol at U of A, for the most part, was prophylactic. That is, they prescribed green light, that is green phototherapy, every day. Lock yourself in a dark closet to shut out all the wavelengths of other light and turn on their experimental lamp. Don't stare right into the lamp. They said just leave your eyes open, no screens, but you can read if you want or you can listen to music, and let the green come in indirectly through the eyeballs. This is the University of Arizona study. And they noticed a significant reduction in the frequency and severity of migraine headaches in their cohort of research subjects. They even reported that green light was effective for pain relief in a colorblind subject. They tested fibromyalgia, and they found that green will relieve the chronic pain of fibromyalgia when it's used in this way. So I explained these kinds of things to Danny, and I demonstrated the MyGreen lamp, and I said, when we do it this way, never mind the U of A protocol, but when you use the MyGreen at this intensity, which is very bright, with your eyes closed, it takes 5 to 10 minutes to feel relief. Now, the U of A protocol was 45 minutes in the dark, and it was a gentle light. The MyGreen is intense. It's much more powerful. It's the most powerful green phototherapy lamp for pain relief that I've found on the market. And at first, I thought this thing was never going to work. Even the customers who are using it and write into me or post reviews on the MyGreenLamp.com site tell me they don't believe it. They've experienced it. They've felt their headaches go from like an 8 out of 10 to a 2 or a 7 to a 0. They say they no longer need their pain medications when they're using the MyGreen Lamp, and they tell me it's incredible and they cannot believe it works. And I sort of left it there. People started writing in. Where can I get the lamps? MyGreenLamp.com sold out in 2 weeks after that podcast. So I guess it was an effective story. And the people who got the lamps are using them and posting reviews. So I thought it was a good time for me to explain in a little more detail the story behind the invention of MyGreen Lamp, how it's different than some of the other green lamps on the market, and the science, what's known and not known about green phototherapy for pain relief. So let me get into it. I didn't set out to invent a green phototherapy device. I was writing my book, Uncommon Cold, for Morozco. I'd taken something of a hiatus from running the day-to-day of the company. ASU was open up, the classrooms were open again. I was no longer teaching via Zoom, and I thought I really want to dedicate my research to the science of cold water immersion. And so I was doing a lot of work online and Googling around, and one of the things that I got curious about was vitamin D. You've probably seen some of my reels on Instagram or maybe my article on biophotons and how the light made inside your mitochondria will convert cholesterol in your brown fat cells into pre-vitamin D when you get cold. Well, Google kind of figured out that I was interested in vitamin D, and I was learning about UV wavelengths, and I don't know how I stumbled across it. Maybe they sent me a paper, and it was on green light. Green light for migraines. It was the Harvard paper. Well, some people that I know suffered from headaches, and one woman whom I was dating in particular, debilitating migraines, maybe once a month, sometimes more often. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I found the Alley lamp. The Alley lamp is, alleylamp.com. You can buy some cheap green lights on Amazon. So there were products in the marketplace that were exploiting the Harvard and the U of A studies. And I bought a couple of these just to fool around with them. And I asked 2 people that I know who get migraine headaches, would you use these? And they thought they were very inconvenient. They were reluctant to even try. Remember I said how migraineurs are very cynical about whatever the next miracle cure is supposed to be? One woman wrote to me and said she's tried 1,300 different things for her migraines. None of them worked until she found the MyGreen lamp. And most experiences are like that. Medication maybe takes the edge off. Electrolytes maybe reduce the frequency a little bit, but nothing will really take the pain away. So these 2 people that I wanted to test the Alley lamp with, when they got a headache, I said, okay, let's go in the bathroom. Let's shut all the doors. Let's go dark. Let's turn this lamp on. Will you tell me, does this soft, gentle green light, does it change your state of pain? And they said, maybe a little bit. The first subject, he said, it takes me from about a 6 down to a 4. I thought, well, that's promising. The second subject was the woman that I was dating, and she was very reluctant. She opened up her eyes. She stared right at that lamp, and she said, I don't think this is going to work. But if I hold my head and keep my eyes still and stare in just the right way, she said, I get a little bit of relief. That was good enough for me. The combination of the clinical trials and the promising experiences of these 2 subjects with the currently commercially available, That was enough for me to call up a friend in Scottsdale. He owns Mito Red Light, and say, would you make a green lamp? He agreed. He went to his manufacturer. I gave him the wavelengths to specify. The lamp came in, we tested it, and sure enough, it was way too bright. He called me up and he said, Tom, this will never work. It's too powerful. I told them not to make it so strong, but they didn't listen to me. Everything in the red light world is about power. Plus, they put like eye shields in the package. They don't even know what we're trying to do here. I don't think that this light is garbage, he said. I'll be right over, I said. I have to see it for myself. I went with the woman whom I was dating, and we went to his office. It's funny because his office has really crappy light environment. You know, it's this fluorescent stuff, of course. And so she was starting to get a headache. And I turned on the green lamp prototype, and I said, oh my gosh, you're right. It's terrible. It's way too bright. If you don't have a headache, it's probably going to give you one. She said, let me see that. And she reached over to take the experimental device out of my hand. She put it right up against her face, really close, with her eyes closed. She said, this feels good. And it does. It took her headache pain down instantly. She didn't have to wait 45 minutes. She didn't have to sit in the dark. We were in an ordinary office room under ordinary office light. But with that green light so intense right next to her face and her eyes closed, blocking out all the other wavelengths, she reported an instant and significant reduction in her headache pain. We ordered 100 of them, and we sold them all. The people want to know, why does it work? But there's nothing in the literature from the University of Arizona or for Harvard that explains the mechanisms. Now, Jack Cruz points something out. He retweeted something that I put out on Green Light when I said, nobody knows how it works. Jack's like, ha! He says, it's hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is red. You know why it's red? Because it absorbs green wavelengths. Now, I agree with Jack. That is, hemoglobin will absorb green wavelengths of light. And so there's something about the green that will energize a red blood cell. But I don't think that that's the whole story. I think that there's something else that we have yet to understand about the way the brain works. I think the green goes through the eyes, activates something in the optic nerve that goes straight into the brain that creates an analgesic sense of calm. So analgesic meaning reducing pain, and calm, improving mood. And why do I think that? I'm not a neurologist. I don't understand the way the brain works. I think that it simulates something important about forest bathing, which brings me back to where I started this little podcast. Dean Hall cured his leukemia with cold water swimming. He cured his lymphoma with forest bathing. And if forest bathing has all of these tremendous benefits, including improved mood and faster wound healing, is it really just the phytoncides? I don't think so. I think it's the light environment. And of course, the forests are green. There is something about, in my view, the way the human body is organized that is meant to live in the shady forest, or meant at least to seek refuge in the shady forest. When we're, I don't know, spotting the predator who's stalking us. I'm imagining some ancient ancestor, 10,000 years ago prior to civilization. Where would our ancestors seek safety? Might it be in the trees of the shady forest? There could be a deep-rooted psychological, physiological link between, of course, our light environment and our psychology, our feeling of safety and security, and our reduction in anxiety when we're in the shady forest. All of these things promote healing. All of these things boost the immune system. When we're talking about the psychology of the patient, anxiety is one of the worst things for the patient's recovery. Relieving that anxiety, lifting that mood, reducing the inflammation. These are typically promoting the patient's healing. And there's some good studies on the color green. Some of these studies come out of hospitals where a patient with a window, of course, heals faster than a patient in a room without a window. But if that window has trees in view, the healing is even faster than that. There's one study of children in a dentist's office. Autistic children in particular are very difficult for dentists to work on because they're on a constant level of anxiety, like a hair trigger sympathetic nervous system that will tip them over into fight or flight. But when the dentist office in this one clinical trial was lit with green, the autistic children calmed down. They were better prepared, better behaviors that allowed the dentist to complete the cleaning or whatever the dental procedure was going to be. And it's not just autistic kids. Even just a picture of a green mural on the dentist's wall will result in lower subjective pain scores reported by the dental patients. There is something about the color green that is very comforting to human psychology, and I believe it is a physiological link between the eye, the optic nerve, and the brain that results in these psychological benefits that feed back into physiological state of health. That's not a biologist or a neurologist's explanation. I don't work inside the body. You know I'm an engineer. I build machines. And the machines that I build are supposed to take you closer to nature. Living in Phoenix, Arizona, I'm at least 2.5 hours drive from the Shady forest. There is no cold water where I live. I teach at Arizona State University. It's the hottest city in North America here. This is why I have Morosco on my balcony. I've got my ice bath so I can get cold whenever I like, and I do it every day. But what am I going to do about the Shady forest? What am I going to do for my green light? And green is the wavelength that nowhere near enough people are talking about. You know about red light. You know about red light because you follow a lot of the same people that I do. You listen to the podcasts. You probably read many of the articles, and you probably have a red light just like I do. And you know that people in modern society are under a chronic deficit of red that they can make up for with a red light device. But have you really thought about green? We are not meant to live our lives on the beach under the full spectrum of sun. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with being on the beach. I'm saying human beings weren't meant for a constant exposure to full spectrum sunlight. Human beings sort of matured as a species in the green, shady forests. There's a paper from, I think it's 1992, Endler. He goes all over the world. He gathers data using spectrophotometry, saying what are the dominant wavelengths of light in the forests of the world. And it doesn't matter if they're coniferous or deciduous, and it doesn't matter what the phytoncide concentration in the air is. The shady forests of the world are green. It might surprise you to learn that they're also red. Not visible red, but the near infrared. There are two wavelengths that dominate the shady forest. One of them is about 550 nanometers, maybe 545 if I'm remembering correctly. That's the green. And the other one is 750 and up, near infrared. The trees do not absorb green light. This is why they're green. They reflect it. Remember, hemoglobin absorbs green light. Chlorophyll will reflect it, will re-emit it. Now, the hemoglobin and the chlorophyll are very similar in their core chemical structure. There's a central metal ion that's surrounded by carbon rings with some nitrogens in there. I'm not exactly an organic chemist, and you can Google it anytime you like. But the structure around the central metal ion in hemoglobin is the exact same as the structure around the central metal ion in chlorophyll. In hemoglobin, of course, it's iron. In chlorophyll, it's magnesium. And the difference in the electron shells between the iron and the magnesium is what controls the properties of light of the molecule. Hemoglobin absorb green. Chlorophyll re-emit green. But those trees, they're also re-emitting the near infrared. So one of the things that happens when you forest bathe is that you are being exposed to the green wavelengths in the visible part of the spectrum and the near infrared wavelengths that are outside the visible part of the spectrum. Is it any wonder that you experience health benefits as a result of your excursion into the shady forest? I would think not. And yet, when it comes to biohacking devices, we see red everywhere. It's probably $100 million or more a year industry. Where do we ever see green? Just a couple of places. There's the Alley lamp. There's some cheap Chinese electronics on Amazon, and I don't want to knock them. If that's all you can afford, give it a try. Try the $30 lamp, or the Alley is $150. Sit in that closet for that 45 minutes. MyGreen is the most powerful and the most advanced green phototherapy device for pain relief that is anywhere on the market. And its invention was something of an accident. It only made sense after we learned about the forest, after we learned about the complementary aspects of green and probably red, which are both present in the forest. And we only learned about the rapid pain relief from migraines, post-concussion, sinus, stress headaches, all different kinds of headaches by experimenting for ourselves. Now, a couple of caveats. There's one headache that it seems like the green light can't touch. Usually, the additional power of the MyGreen compared to Alley or some other devices, Huga might be another one. Usually the additional power creates additional convenience. You get to close your eyes and everything works faster. But for women who are suffering from what I call a high estrogen headache, they get a headache every month at a certain time of their cycle. The green doesn't seem to do a dang thing for it. I don't know why. So this means about 80% of the people who are trying MyGreen are getting relief. And I want to go back to something Jack said about hemoglobin, because you know that I doubt hemoglobin is the whole story. I'm not doubting Jack Cruz. I'm saying, yes, the hemoglobin absorbs the green light. Yes, that may create an energy transfer into the red blood cells that improves the cardiovascular properties, improves the circulatory properties. We've certainly seen this in the review of forest bathing literature. But I said, I don't think that's the explanation for headaches. Well, I had a customer after the Danny Jones podcast who purchased a MyGreen lamp, and it arrived in the mail, and she said, I didn't have a headache, but I did have menstrual cramps. She said, just on a whim, I thought I would use MyGreen. She put it on her belly so that her uterus would be absorbing the green. Now, green does not penetrate the skin or the body as far as red does. Red is a longer wavelength. Remember, the green is around the 540 nanometers, and red is up in the visible part of the spectrum, 700 near infrared, 750, 800 more. The longer the wavelength, the further it will penetrate the skin and the body. So green doesn't penetrate as far as red, but it will go through. That is, it will get through a centimeter or two. She put the green lamp full power, both wavelengths, the 530 and the 545, onto her belly so that it would reach her womb. And she said 10 minutes later, she felt relief from the menstrual pain. Now, I'd never thought of this. All the women who were writing to me and saying, I was so disappointed because the green didn't take away my menstrual headache, or the headache that she gets at a certain part of her menstrual cycle. I'd never thought to ask them to put the green on their belly instead of in their eyes until I got this note from this reader. Now, this might be a misnomer when I call it a high estrogen headache. Perhaps that's not the right way to think of what was going on for her when she used green light to relieve her menstrual pain. But it worked. And why would it work? This is where I think Jack might be really onto something. Bringing the green light to the womb when it is engorged with blood. Perhaps that's a really good idea. There are no clinical trials. And you know I'm the one who wrote that you can't let the clinical trials tell you what's happening to your body. There is nothing more important than your N=1 personal experience. When you go on Twitter and you start talking about biophotons, or you talk about ice baths and testosterone, the medical doctors of Twitter come out of the woodwork to tell me that there's no double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized study that says the thing that happened to me actually happened to me. What a crock of crap that is. It's the same kind of nonsense that denies the experience of those who have been, for example, vaccine injured. Your experience is your experience. There is no clinical trial that can take that away from you. So if a reader writes to me and says she used the green light on her womb and relieved her menstrual pain, I got to go to the library and see what possible mechanisms might there be. What new hypotheses should I be aware of? What clinical trials should we be running? I'm not going to write her back and say, no, it didn't. And Jack has pointed me towards one. Hemoglobin absorbs green light. Perhaps we should be giving the hemoglobin some of the wavelengths that it is built to absorb. Now, there's a couple of other side notes. You can imagine that it's very inexpensive to build a green light. It's even cheaper to build like green sunglasses. There are blue blocker glasses everywhere. And if you work a night shift, I have a goddaughter who works at Trader Joe's. She works in the freezer, for goodness sake, so at least she's getting some cold exposure, but she works the night shift. And so the whole night she's in the cold, in and out of the fluorescent lights. I finally got her some blue blocker glasses so that she could get to sleep when her shift is over. There's also green glasses. These are sunglasses that you wear that block out, or are supposed to block out, all the wavelengths except green. And of course, they look kind of silly, but if you're fighting a migraine, you don't mind looking silly. They work. There are clinical trials studying the efficacy of these green sunglasses. And so when I say they work, they're no miracle. But the subjects who have tried them report improvements in their migraine headaches. There's something about the wavelength of green that relieves pain. They do not work in the throes of an active migraine, but they're less expensive. So you might use them if you have sort of a background headache, or you don't have the 10 or 15 minutes to take a break at work and sit in front of your MyGreen Lamp. You might wear them just like you wear your blue blocker glasses. I don't make them and I don't sell them, but I'm aware of them. The MyGreen Lamp is the most expensive on the market, and it works the fastest. That's its principal advantage, is that the additional power and the additional wavelengths in the MyGreen, they work faster on the pain, but they have other effects. Harvard did this follow-up study, and this was people being treated for general anxiety disorder. And so they split them up into two groups. They said in one group, we're going to do traditional talk therapy in an office lit with green light. And in the other group, we're going to do the traditional talk therapy lit in a normal office environment, you know, the tube fluorescent lights. They saw a significant improvement in the symptoms of general anxiety disorder in those subjects who did the traditional talk therapy under green light. This isn't even pain relief anymore. This is an improvement in mood as a result of illuminating the therapist's office with the alley lamp. I use my green light every morning. The days are very short now. Even in Arizona, during the winter, and it's early January, the days are short, and so I wake up before the sun and I put my red light on. And I start my emails or my reading or whatever I'm doing, I put my green light on. For me, it gives me some of that sense of calm that probably the patients in the Harvard study that are being treated for general anxiety disorder also experienced. We mentioned pain relief for migraine. We mentioned pain relief for fibromyalgia. Well, many of my readers are now writing to me saying that they're also using the green light for their toddlers at nap time. You know that young children, they sleep several times a day. We should probably do that. You know, when the winter nights are so long, there's something called biphasic sleep. You go to bed really early, you wake up in the middle of the night, you turn on your red light, I don't know, you do a few errands or chores or something like that, and you go back to bed. You split the long night up into 2 stages. Now, toddlers do this, we call it napping. Most grown-ups, they're not napping anymore. But the parents of these toddlers who have the green light, they write to me and they say, my child now insists when they go down for a nap, they want the green light. Because the same sense of calm, quietude that came over the research subjects in the general anxiety disorder study is being experienced by the children who often don't want to go down for a nap, but find the green light soothing in a way that helps put them to sleep. I think this ties back again to forest bathing, whereas we can't always be out in nature. I'm an engineer. I'm a civil engineer. I'm not going to give up my infrastructure. I'm not going back into caves just for my health. I teach at an urban campus. I live an urban life, and I want technology in my life, and yet that technology has disconnected me from nature. MyGreen Lamp is one of the ways that I can get reconnected. It is the next best thing to nature. I can't be out in the shady forest with its mood-lifting properties when I need to, but I can bring the light of the shady forest into me, and I do that every morning. My sense is that it helps. My readers tell me the same thing. So how would you use MyGreen? If you're ready to try it, you got to go to mygreenlamp.com. Look for the shop page. You can purchase the MyGreen Lamp. There's money-back guarantee. You don't like it or it doesn't work, that's okay. You send it back and I'll refund your money. And if that's too expensive, you can go to Amazon or you can go to allaylamp.com. You get one of the less expensive versions and you can try it there and see if it's promising for you. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. You can use green as an ambient light. You can put it on your desk. You can use it sort of as a task light. You can use it to treat an active migraine headache, or you can use it to prevent headaches. The more powerful the lamp, and this is what it looks to me just based upon my experience, the more powerful the lamp, the more it will overpower all the other wavelengths available. And when it's really strong, like MyGreen is, you can close your eyes so that all the other wavelengths are blocked out and only the green will penetrate. MyGreen has a pulsing mode, so it will turn on and off like a strobe. Nobody who's ever used it has told me that it's ever done them any good. And I haven't seen anything in the clinical trials that say that this feature is important. But built in are different controls that allow you to experiment. What's the right intensity for you? Full on, all wavelengths, all the time? Or maybe 25, 50% of full intensity? What are the right wavelengths for you? MyGreen comes equipped with two. You can use just one or the other, or you can use both. And if the pulsing works for you, I really want to know what sort of scenario or protocol, what condition did the pulsing improve for you? The idea is allow you to be your own researcher. Do your own N=1 study with the MyGreen Lamp to find those settings that are most effective for whatever pain it is that you're trying to treat. Now, we also have the goggles. And the goggles are made for a specific reason. I'm going to go get the goggles, and I'm going to tell you why I spent $75,000 working with a medical device equipment manufacturer in Utah to develop these. Because the woman whom I was dating said when she had a migraine, she didn't want to have to hold the lamp. She wanted something that was going to be more comfortable for her, that she could leave on her face without having to hold it. So I modified one of these ski masks, and I had this medical device manufacturer build me a box that would power LEDs built into the ski mask. There are 4 wavelengths in the MyGreen goggles, and from 520, 530, 540, 550, and you can control them with different sliders. You can control the intensity of each wavelength individually. Because the MyGreen goggles are made in America, in Utah, and they didn't benefit from reusing anybody else's technology. They're sort of made from scratch. They're much more expensive. But they also have greater intensity and more wavelengths. They're more comfortable. And so some people might find that they want to use the goggles, just lie in bed 20 minutes with the goggles on their face, rather than holding the lamp close to their face or putting it on the cell phone stand that it comes with and sitting in front of it while the green shines in through their eyes. The goggles are sold out too. And I'm probably going to go back to Utah and ask them to make me some more. I'm not sure when I'm going to get around to that. There's a couple of charging things that I want to improve before I bring them out for sale again. If you're ready to try the light environment of forest bathing inside your own home and see if you experience the calm and the pain relief that my other readers and my other customers are reporting to me, that the subjects in the University of Arizona and the Harvard study reported to them, then go to MyGreen. Buy one of those lamps. Tell me if it's working for you, and return it if it doesn't.